Call of Duty Zombies as a mode can be known for a lot of different things. Some people could relate it to the extravagant wonder weapons that feature in each and every map, or some people could just simply relate it to the outstanding gameplay loop that the game presents. However, something that is extremely important and something that has recently been losing traction is the atmosphere, setting, and location of each and every Zombies map. The location is a major factor of what makes a Zombies map unique. Imagine if every Zombies map took place in the heart of Germany. There is only so much you can do with that. By expanding this to a global and even sometimes universal scale, Call of Duty Zombies can remain fresh and extremely exciting across a wide variety of modes that feature the maps with separate locations. However, with the 12 total Call of Duty games that feature zombies, the locations are bound to be pushed to their limits, taking place in separate countries, continents, and even breaking the Earth's surface to whole other planets and universes. So in this video, I had a question. How many countries have a Zombies map within them? Well, today we aim to answer that question and truly find out how many countries feature a Zombies map through the near 60 Zombies maps we have in the present day. I also wanted to mention that I will be tallying up all the answers to see which country has the most Zombies maps, so place your bets in the comments or, just in your head. Starting it off in the first Call of Duty Zombies game, Nocturne Toten takes place in an abandoned airfield somewhere in the Reich, which of course is just Germany during World War II if you catch my drift. We know this because of the description of the map, which states, quote, "You drove them deep into the heart of the Reich, you thought they were dead, you were wrong." Verrückt similarly takes place in Germany, which can be evident by the intro card we see when spawning in, which states Wittenau Sanatorium, Berlin, Germany. Shinonuma actually is the first Zombies map to take place outside of the German borders and instead takes place in Japan, more specifically the Rising Sun facility. However, Der Ries does go back to the formula with a return to Germany, as it is stated that it is located near Breslau, Germany. We actually get a radio in the Giant that states a more accurate location, however we will get to that later. But those are all the maps in Der Ries. So far obviously Germany is in the lead in terms of the tallies, but it makes sense as World of War Zombies was marketed at the time as Nazi Zombies, meaning that the majority of the maps were of course going to take place in their territory. As we move on to Black Ops, however, things will start to shake up a bit, so let's keep going. Kino der Toten was the first map released for Black Ops 1 and actually also features in Germany. Now there is a specific name for where it is exactly located, but I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but just know it's somewhere in West Berlin. I should mention that Kino der Toten was originally supposed to be DLC 4 for World at War, however it got pushed back because of the release of another Call of Duty, which probably explains its presence in Germany and of course its general similarity to Der Ries. Anyways, tangent aside, 5 is next and is the first map in the video to feature in the United States, as of course it takes place in the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, and features the literal president of the United States at the time, John F. Kennedy. Ascension is another first for this video, as it takes place specifically in the Soviet Union, but it actually is in Kazakhstan, which is a country directly by Russia geographically. Again, I am not even going to try to pronounce that, but just know it is a cosmodrome in the Soviet Union. Call of the Dead actually takes place in Russia, as it takes place near the Tunguska River, which is located near Siberia. Now, this is where it gets a little weird, and honestly, I am not entirely sure how to handle Shangri-La, because as of right now, there is no concrete evidence as to where it takes place exactly, but I will be using the most credited theory, which is a mountain range somewhere in the Himalayas. This doesn't really help much either, as this means it could take place in one of 5 main countries, those being India, China, Bhutan, Nepal, and Pakistan. However, I did some further digging and found a biome map of the Himalayan mountains and matched the biome type of Shangri-La with this map, which gave me the conclusive answer that it is most likely in India due to the fact that that is where the majority of the tropical wet deciduous forest biome is in the Himalayas. But that isn't even it for Shangri-La. It is commonly theorized that upon entering Eclipse mode for this Easter egg, you actually transport to Mars, so just for safety, I am going to include Mars as another location. way too much work for that, but thankfully the next one is super easy, as of course Moon just takes place on the moon. Now hold up, I am aware that Area 51 is indeed in the United States, so I will be additionally giving this map another tally as well for both. But that is it for Black Ops 1. A little bit more work for some of the maps, but we did get some new additions to the tally, so that's great. Moving on to Black Ops 2 with the release map Transit, this map takes place in a town known as Hanford, which is located in Washington State and of course the United States. The other release map, Nuketown Zombies, similarly takes place in the United States as well, more specifically in the state of Nevada at a national security site. This also can be evident by how both the CIA and CDC are within the map, and how of course we know that Nuketown is in Nevada from all of its other appearances in multiplayer. The first DLC of this game, Die Rise, is actually the first map in this video to be located in China, which of course can be evident by just looking around the map, but a cool fun fact is that it is actually a collision of Shanghai and Province 22 as a result of the broken earth, but geographically it still does take place in China. Mob of the Dead sees a return to the United States once again, this time in San Francisco, California on Alcatraz Island of course. Buried is actually interesting in terms of its location, since the map itself looks like a western mining town that you would see in the gold rush that took place in the United States. You would most likely assume it took place in America. However, due to the fact that the broken earth concept exists, this map actually takes place in Angola, Africa, our first map to take place in continental Africa. And finally, Origins, which takes place in France at Excavation Site 64 and is obviously one of the more iconic locations in Call of Duty Zombies history, and is actually the first French map to appear on this video. But that is it with Black Ops 2. A lot of tallies added for the United States and new additions to the country list, but let's move on to the first non-Treyarch mode, Exo Zombies. The first map, Outbreak, takes place in the United States at an Atlas research facility, and I will spare some time as well and say that the next map, Infection, takes place in the United States as well. Now, the next two maps for Exo Zombies are a little difficult to really pin down because in all technicality, the maps take place in the Pacific Ocean, literally just chilling in the ocean. So for these maps being Carrier and Descent, I guess I'm really just gonna create a whole separate category for the Pacific Ocean because geographically they literally are in the ocean. But that was it for Exo Zombies. I did not really want to talk about this mode, but hey, we made it and added some more to the United States, which is rapidly growing as of right now. Moving into 2015 with Black Ops 3, Shadows of Evil takes place in a fictional city known as Morgue City. However, it does, once again, take place in the United States. A quick fun fact about Morgue City, it actually is designed based off of Chicago and New Orleans architectural structures, furthering its involvement in the United States. But anyways, moving on, The Giant is a remaster of Der Riese and takes place in the same exact location, so I'm not really entirely sure if I wanted to count this on the tally as they literally take place in the same exact location, but I am just going to give it the tally because it technically is a whole separate map and I didn't really want to leave it out. Der Eisendrache takes place in Griffin Castle, which is located in Salzburg, Austria. Although Austria is a completely new country now, at the time of this map it was located in an annexed part of Germany, but I'm still going to count it as in Austria as that is where it technically is geographically. Zetsubo no Shima is a strange location for a map as it takes place in a Division 9 facility off in the Pacific Ocean. However, the island is Japanese occupied, meaning that it takes place in Japan essentially. Gorod Krovi is one of the more obvious on this list as of course it takes place in Stalingrad, Russia during the Battle of Stalingrad during World War II. And finally, Revelations does not necessarily take place in a country, and it does not even take place on Earth, but it instead takes place in Agartha, a fictional universe that exists in Call of Duty Zombies. But that's it for Black Ops 3. A lot of variety in terms of locations, which is always awesome, however not a whole lot of new countries. Moving into one of the most underrated zombies modes of all time, Infinite Warfare Zombies, the first map, Zombies in Spaceland, is stated to take place in an amusement park in the United States of America. No specific city or even state is provided, however it does say it takes place in the US. Now for the next three maps in the DLC cycle, all of them actually take place in the United States, with Raven the Redwoods in Northern California, Shaolin Shuffle in New York City, and Attack of the Radioactive Thing in a fictional town known as Sonoma Beach, which is in California. The only map that does not take place in the United States in this game is the Beast from Beyond, which of course does not even exist on Earth, and we do not even know what planet it is on, as as it is never disclosed. So Beast from Beyond is just a random planet, and all the other DLC are in the US. Got it. Moving into 2017, World War II Zombies features a total of 5 maps that have very distinct locations, with the Final Reich taking place in Germany, of course. Now, I know I just said that there were interesting locations, but just hold tight for a second. The Darkest Shore does additionally take place in Germany, and once again, the Shadowed Throne additionally takes place in Germany, with it being in Berlin, but the next map is where it gets really interesting. The Torture Path is a really interesting map, as it is not one huge cohesive map, but is instead split up into multiple separate areas, meaning it takes place in a wide range of locations and countries. One of these locations is in northern Spain, another one is on a ship called the USS Mount Olympus in the Pacific Ocean yet again, and another one is literally in Antarctica, which is insane. But what is even crazier is the fact that Antarctica is featured in the next map, the Frozen Dawn, where the entire map takes place on Antarctica, which is even more insane. Now, as we enter Black Ops 4, there is some really interesting things that I think are worth mentioning. All of the Aether maps within this game are constructed off of previously existing maps, meaning that they take place in the exact same location, so I will just be counting an additional tally for the maps as they literally are in the same spot. So for instance, Blood of the Dead takes place on Alcatraz Island, which is still in San Francisco, so I'll just count it again because I don't want to miss out. Same with Classified, which also takes place in the Pentagon and Arlington. However, the Chaos maps actually have some new locations, as 9 takes place in the Egyptian province of the Roman Empire, essentially meaning it takes place in Egypt, which is a new country for this video. Of course, Voyage of Despair is another Zombies map that does not take place on any country and instead takes place in the Atlantic Ocean, which is a new place to the list, I guess. Dead of the Night is actually the first location in this entire video to take place in England, which for some reason I find really strange, as you would think a Zombies map would take place in England somewhere before this, but I digress. It takes place in a manor located in Hampshire, and I love the Chaos maps as they really delve into more outlandish locations. Ancient Evil exemplifies this as it takes place in Greece, more specifically Delphi, and is a really interesting location and probably one of my favorite in Zombies history. Alpha Omega takes place on a location known as Camp Edward, which is just essentially Nuketown as it takes place in Nevada, and Tag der Toten is additionally no different from Call of the Dead as it takes place in the Soviet Union near the Tunguska River. But that is it for Black Ops 4. All of the maps get a little weird in terms of locations, as some repeat and some go completely off the rails, but let's move on to Cold War. With the launch map D Machine, it actually kicks it off pretty strong as it takes place in Poland, more specifically Morosco, which is new to this video. Firebase C actually continues this trend of new locations as it takes place in Vietnam, making it the first official Zombies map to take place in Vietnam. I was debating putting this in the video since it has multiple locations, but Outbreak has a wide range of locations, including Russia, Algeria, which is new to this video, and oh my god, the Atlantic Ocean. Technically, since Outbreak is canon, I felt I should include it, and it does add Algeria to the country count, so I will continue with it. Mauer der Toten is the first map in a while to actually take place in Germany, which is weird as it has seemed like we have not been in the country for a while, even though it literally started the Zombies mode. But of course it takes place in Berlin, you know, because of the Berlin Wall. Forsaken is interesting, as technically at the time it takes place in the Soviet Union, however it is in modern day Ukraine. So technically geographically it takes place in Ukraine, which is another country to add to the count. Cold War often gets beaten up for a lack of atmosphere, which I mainly can agree with, but like each map was literally in such unique locations, so I think that's pretty cool. So Vanguard gets a little weird, as obviously with its objectives you go to a wide range of locations, but I personally will just be counting the hub, so to say, for the maps, meaning that Duranfang will only count for Stalingrad, as that is where the base map actually is without doing any teleporting for objectives. Terra Maledicta takes place in Egypt for its base map, which is additionally shared by the Archon, as they are literally the same exact map. Shinonuma Reborn does take place in Japan in this game, and is actually in a different part of Japan than it was in the original, as it is in the Okinawa prefecture. Now, since I mentioned mentioned Outbreak, I might as well mention Modern Warfare 3 Zombies since it is canon to the storyline and the entirety of the map takes place in a location known as Urzikstan, which upon doing research isn't actually a real country, and it is made up of a couple real life areas such as Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, so I'm just gonna say it's Afghanistan for this video. And finally, making it to the newest game currently, Black Ops 6, Terminus takes place in the Philippine Sea, which I'm going to count as the Philippines since the country owns the island that the crew is located on, meaning that it is yet another addition to this list. Liberty Falls, of course, takes place in the United States, more specifically West Virginia, which is a new state to the mode at least. The first DLC, Citadel des Morts, sees a long-awaited return to France in which the tomb does the exact same thing as they are geographically close to each other. And finally, Shattered Vale takes place in West Virginia yet again, as it is literally right next to Liberty Falls. Like, you can literally see it from the map itself, that's how close it is. So, with all of that being said, let's tally up all the data that we have collected throughout this video. According to the data that I have gathered and the criteria that I have set, there has been at least one Call of Duty Zombies map within 19 different countries, 5 different continents, 2 oceans, and a wide range of celestial bodies such as the moon and unknown planets. That is absolutely insane. Even though there have been an insane amount of Zombies maps, I was not expecting this much data from them, and I honestly was surprised with the final tally of the maps featuring within countries. But now is time for the big reveal. Which country has the most Zombies maps in the entire history of Call of Duty Zombies as of right now? Well, in the number 3 spot with a total of 5 separate maps, we have Russia. I was honestly expecting it to be at least in the top 3, but I think that was because I was associating the Soviet Union with Russia, when in reality, geographically, locations such as Forsaken and Ascension don't even take place in Russia. But moving on, the number 2 spot with a grand total of 9 different maps, we have Germany. Once again, I was expecting this to be the number 1 spot in all honesty, but personally, I think I just clouded my mind with the fact that older Zombies took place heavily in Germany since the mode was revolved around it, and the fact that some maps are in German when they don't even take place in Germany, like Tag der Toten. But finally, the single country that has the most Zombies maps, a country that has a outstanding total of 17 Zombies maps, it is of course the United States of America. Now, before making this video, I did not actually think that this would be the most out of all of them. I definitely thought it would be in the top 3, but not the most. I think the fact that the Black Ops 4 remakes and the entirety of Infinite Warfare Zombie exist make it a heavily inflated count. However, the United States clears in terms of Zombies maps, literally doubling the count of second place in Germany. But that is all for the video today. I hope you guys enjoyed and maybe learned a thing or two about geography and how it relates to Call of Duty Zombies. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you let me know because this did take a little bit of research. But with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.